The glow from Oliver's laptop screen illuminated his 12-year-old face in my dimly lit sitting room, his fingers dancing across the keyboard with a precision that both amazed and unsettled me. My grandson was visiting for the weekend, and while I cherished his company, I had no idea that what I assumed were harmless computer games were actually something far more sophisticated and potentially dangerous. "Grandma, look what I did," Oliver said, his voice brimming with the proud excitement of a child who had just mastered a new trick, completely unaware that he was about to turn my world upside down. I am Griselda Blackwood, 74 years old, and I'll be the first to admit that technology baffles me completely. I can barely manage to answer my smartphone without accidentally hanging up on people. The idea of hacking sounds like something from a spy movie, not something my sweet, freckle-faced grandson could possibly be capable of. "What exactly did you do, sweetheart?" I asked, lowering myself into my favorite armchair beside him, squinting at the colorful windows and scrolling text that filled his screen. "I hacked into Mom's phone," he announced cheerfully, as casually as if he'd told me he'd learned to ride a bicycle. My heart skipped. "You hacked into your mother's telephone? Oliver dear, isn't that illegal?" "It's only illegal if you do it to hurt people or steal things," he replied confidently, clearly reciting something he had researched. "I'm practicing penetration testing. That's when you try to break into computer systems to find security weaknesses. I want to learn cybersecurity so I can protect people from bad hackers when I grow up." I had owned and operated the Grand Blackwood Hotel for over 30 years. I had handled floods, lawsuits, staff walkouts, and even a suspicious kitchen fire. But nothing in my decades of hospitality experience had prepared me for navigating the ethics of my grandson's technological talents. "Well," I said slowly, choosing my words with care, "I suppose learning is important, but perhaps you should ask your parents' permission before practicing on their devices." "But Grandma, he protested. "That's not how security testing works. If you ask permission, people change their behavior. Then you don't get real results." The logic, unsettling as it was, made an uncomfortable kind of sense. Oliver had always been exceptionally bright, reading at a high school level by 8, building complex electronic gadgets by 10, but his technical abilities now far exceeded my capacity to understand them. "What exactly did you find on your mother's phone?" I asked. "That's what I wanted to show you." He clicked through several screens filled with text messages. Most appeared ordinary: grocery lists, school schedules, casual plans. Then he opened a folder that made my breath catch. "Look at this, Grandma Gigi. There's a group chat called Operation Get Rid of Griselda. It was created 6 months ago." The name struck me like a physical blow. I stared at the screen, seeing my own name twisted into something cruel, and felt a cold heaviness settle deep in my stomach. "Oliver, that can't be right," I whispered. "Are you sure you're reading it correctly?" "I'm sure, Grandma. There are 2,847 messages in this group." "Who's in it?" I asked, already afraid of the answer. "Mom, Dad, and someone called Thomas B. Thomas B. My brother Thomas, the man I had trusted with my business affairs and family decisions for decades. Can you read some of the messages to me, sweetheart?" Oliver's expression darkened as he scrolled. At 12 years old, he was old enough to understand that what he was seeing was wrong, even if he couldn't fully grasp the consequences. "Here's one from 6 months ago," he said. Dad wrote, "We need to move forward with the incompetency plan before Mom starts giving away money to random charities or decides to remarry some fortune hunter." The words felt unreal, as though they belonged to someone else's life. My son Marcus, the boy I had raised, supported, and loved unconditionally, was discussing plans to have me declared incompetent. "Keep reading," I said quietly. Mom replied, "I've already started documenting her forgetful moments. Last week she asked me the same question twice and I got it on video. We need more evidence like that to build a strong case." "And Uncle Thomas?" I asked. Oliver frowned, stumbling over the legal language. He wrote something about cognitive decline documentation and establishing patterns of diminished capacity for asset management. The room seemed to tilt. For 6 months, my own family had been conspiring to strip me of my independence, my business, and my finances. "How many messages did you say were in this chat?" I asked again just to hear the number. 2,847, Grandma Gigi. And there are shared files too. Photos. Documents. Can you show me the photos? Oliver clicked into a media folder, and what appeared on the screen made me gasp aloud. There were images of me, except they weren't real. In one, I appeared to be staring blankly at a coffee cup, as if I didn't know what it was. In another, I looked lost in my own kitchen, wandering with a vacant, confused expression. These photos, I said shakily. They don't look right. I don't remember posing for anything like this. That's because they're fake, Grandma She, Oliver said softly. Someone used deepfake technology. They changed your facial expressions to make you look confused. Deepfake. I repeated. It's when artificial intelligence is used to change someone's face in photos or videos, to make it look like they're doing or saying things they never did. The scale of the deception was staggering. This wasn't just gossip or concern. My family had been manufacturing evidence. Is there more? I asked. There's a lot more, Oliver said. They've been planning something called the intervention for next week. They're bringing in a fake doctor to your birthday dinner to evaluate your mental condition. My 75th birthday. Next Saturday. Marcus and Claudia had been planning what they called a surprise celebration for weeks. Now I understood, it wasn't a celebration. It was an ambush. Oliver, I said, steadying my voice. I need you to save all of this information. Can you do that? I already did, Grandma She, he replied. I saved everything to multiple backup drives. Even the deleted files they thought were gone forever. Deleted files? Yeah. People think when you delete something it disappears. But it doesn't really go away until new data overwrites it. I recovered hundreds of deleted messages. My chest tightened. What were they talking about? Oliver swallowed. Dividing up your money. And your property. My grandson, this brilliant 12-year-old boy, had uncovered a conspiracy that could have destroyed my life and stolen my life's work out from under me. But worse than the financial betrayal was the truth he revealed. The people I trusted most in the world, my son, my daughter-in-law, and my brother, had been systematically planning to betray me for months. Oliver, I said, my voice trembling despite my effort to steady it, you've done something very important here. You may have saved your grandmother from something terrible. Are you going to call the police? He asked, his eyes wide but determined. I don't know yet, sweetheart, I replied honestly. This is very complicated, and I need time to think about how to handle it properly. What I didn't tell Oliver was how terrified I truly was. At 74, I had believed my greatest challenges were behind me. Managing my health, protecting the hotel, and enjoying the years I had left. I never imagined I would need to defend myself against my own family's attempt to have me declared incompetent and institutionalized. Yet as I looked at my grandson's earnest face, lit by the glow of evidence that could either save or destroy our family, I realized something else just as clearly. I wasn't as helpless as Marcus and Claudia believed. I had resources they didn't know about, connections they had never met. And most importantly, I had someone in my life who cared about me enough to help me fight back against this betrayal. The question was whether I had the courage to reach out to him. Doing so would mean revealing a secret I had kept for 8 months, out of fear, not shame. Some secrets are kept to protect others from harm. Mine had been kept to protect me from embarrassment. But now, that same secret might be the key to protecting me from something far worse. That night, after Oliver fell asleep in the guest bedroom, I sat alone at my kitchen table, staring at my phone with an anxiety I hadn't felt since the early days of running the Grand Blackwood Hotel. The evidence of my family's conspiracy was safely stored on Oliver's backup devices, but the weight of what I'd learned pressed down on me like a physical force. For 8 months, I had been carrying a secret that felt both wonderful and terrifying. William Sterling, Judge William Sterling, had become part of my life in ways my family could never imagine. I had been too afraid of their reactions to acknowledge the relationship publicly. William first stayed at my hotel during a judicial conference the previous spring. What began as professional courtesy evolved into something entirely unexpected at my age. He was intelligent, kind. He treated me with a level of respect that reminded me of my late husband, Harold, but without the protective condescension that had sometimes accompanied even Harold's best intentions. Griselda, William had said during one of our private dinners, You have one of the sharpest business minds I've encountered in 40 years of legal practice. Your insights into hospitality management could be applied to court administration in ways that would revolutionize judicial efficiency. Those conversations had been intoxicating. For decades, people had admired my wealth, my success, but rarely acknowledged the intelligence and strategic thinking that created it. William saw me as a complete person, not merely a wealthy widow. That recognition awakened feelings I believed had been buried alongside Harold. Yet I was terrified of how Marcus and Claudia would react to learning that their 74-year-old mother was romantically involved with someone. The few times I casually mentioned William's name, referring to him only as a pleasant hotel guest, Claudia had made cruel remarks about older women making fools of themselves chasing men. Marcus had warned me to be careful of people who might be interested in my financial situation. So I kept William separate from my family life. We met at restaurants far from my neighborhood. We traveled under the guise of spa retreats or cultural excursions. I never mentioned the depth of our connection to anyone who might judge me for it. Now, staring at my phone just after midnight, I understood how misplaced my fear had been. The real threat to my independence and dignity wasn't a relationship with a good man who respected me. It was my own family, actively plotting to destroy my autonomy. I scrolled through my contacts until I found William's number. My finger hovered over the call button as I wrestled with the decision that would change everything. If I called him, I would have to admit I'd been hiding our relationship from my family for 8 months. I would have to explain that fear of judgment had led me to choose secrecy over honesty about one of the most meaningful parts of my life. If I didn't call him, I might lose everything I had spent 50 years building. At 12:17 a.m. my phone rang. I nearly dropped it. William's name glowed on the screen. "William," I whispered when I answered. "Griselda," he said, concern heavy in his voice. "I'm sorry to call so late, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Are you all right?" The sincerity in his voice broke me. I began crying before I could stop myself. "William, I need help. I don't know who else to turn to." "What happened? Are you hurt? Do you need me to come over?" "I'm not hurt physically," I said, struggling for breath. "But I've discovered something about my family. William, I'm in trouble. And it's the kind of trouble that requires legal expertise I don't have. I'll be there in 20 minutes. But William, it's after midnight. If you're in trouble," he interrupted gently, "nothing else matters. Give me your address." The request froze me. In 8 months together, William had never been to my home. I had been afraid neighbors might see him and report back to Marcus or Claudia. Every moment we shared had been carefully placed in neutral territory. "William," I said, "there's something I need to explain about why I've never invited you here." "We'll talk about that when I arrive," he replied calmly. "Right now, I just need to know you're safe." I gave him my address. While I waited, I tried to organize my thoughts, how to explain the conspiracy Oliver uncovered, and the family dynamics that had made me so fearful of honesty. When William arrived, still in his suit despite the late hour, he looked every bit the distinguished federal judge he had been for 25 years. But there was no professional detachment in his eyes, only personal concern. "Griselda," he said softly, "what's going on?" I led him into the kitchen, where Oliver's laptop remained open, the screen filled with screenshots of the messages that changed everything. "My 12-year-old grandson hacked into his mother's phone today," I said. What he found was a group chat between my son, my daughter-in-law, and my brother, planning to have me declared mentally incompetent so they can take control of my assets. William's expression hardened instantly, concern giving way to sharp professional focus. "Show me everything." For the next hour, I walked William through all that Oliver had uncovered. And for the first time since the nightmare began, I wasn't facing it alone. The 2,847 messages planning my institutionalization. The deepfake photographs engineered to make me appear confused and disoriented. The fake medical evaluation scheduled to coincide with my birthday dinner. The meticulous plans for dividing my property among the 3 conspirators. William's questions were precise and methodical, shaped by decades of experience handling financial fraud and bitter family disputes. Yet beneath his professional calm, I could see genuine anger building as the full scope of what my family had been planning became clear to him. "Griselda," he said finally, his voice low and controlled. This is criminal conspiracy to commit fraud against an elderly person. The use of deepfake technology to manufacture evidence elevates it to a federal case. Wire fraud, identity manipulation, the works. I swallowed. What does that mean practically? It means that if we handle this correctly, your son, your daughter-in-law, and your brother could face significant prison time for what they've attempted to do to you. He didn't soften the next part. And if we don't handle it correctly, you could be declared incompetent and institutionalized based on fabricated evidence, while they liquidate your assets and assume legal control over your medical and financial decisions. The stark reality finally settled in. Without Oliver's accidental discovery, I would have walked into my own birthday dinner the following Saturday completely unprepared, into an ambush that could have cost me my freedom, my independence, and everything I had built over the past 74 years. William, I said quietly, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course. Are you willing to help me fight this conspiracy, even though it means stepping into a very messy family situation that could become public and deeply complicated? He didn't hesitate. Griselda, I would help you fight this under any circumstances, he said. What they're planning is unconscionable. Then he paused, looking directly at me, his expression shifting, still determined but unmistakably personal. But I'm especially willing because I care about you more than I think you realize. And because I've been hoping for months that you'd trust me enough to let me be part of your real life, instead of keeping me separate from the people and situations that matter to you. Some secrets are revealed by choice. Others are revealed by necessity. My 8-month secret about William was about to become the foundation for saving everything I had built. The next morning, William arrived at precisely 9 o'clock, carrying 2 large coffee cups and a leather briefcase that suggested he'd spent the early hours preparing for what he called our strategic planning session. Oliver was already awake and eager to demonstrate his technological findings to someone who could appreciate their legal significance. Judge Sterling, Oliver said, adopting the solemn formality 12-year-olds use when trying to impress important adults, I've prepared a comprehensive digital evidence package. It includes metadata analysis, recovery timestamps, and verification protocols for all of the conspiracy communications. William looked impressed, despite himself. Oliver, that's exactly the kind of documentation prosecutors need to build a strong federal case, he said. How did you learn to organize evidence so systematically? I've been reading about cybersecurity law and digital forensics, Oliver replied. I want to work for the FBI someday. Evidence has to be collected and preserved correctly, or it gets thrown out in court. William nodded. Your grandmother is very fortunate to have someone with your skills and your integrity, looking out for her welfare. I watched the interaction with a mixture of pride and regret. This was the first time in 8 months that William was meeting anyone from my family, and the circumstances were nothing like the ones I had imagined during those private moments when I'd allowed myself to fantasize about introducing him properly. Oliver, I said gently, Judge Sterling and I need to discuss some adult legal matters. Would you mind working on your computer projects in the guest room for a while? Sure, Grandma Gigi. But if you need me to explain any of the technical evidence, just call me. Some of the deepfake detection stuff is pretty complicated. After he left the room, William opened his briefcase and removed several thick folders filled with legal documents and research notes. Griselda, I spent most of last night researching precedent cases involving family conspiracies to defraud elderly relatives, he said. What your son, daughter-in-law, and brother are attempting is more common than you might think, but it's also far more serious legally than they probably realize. What do you mean? Most family financial exploitation cases involve taking advantage of actual cognitive decline or physical vulnerability, he explained. But manufacturing evidence of incompetency using deepfake technology transforms this from civil fraud into federal criminal conspiracy. He spread the documents across my kitchen table, pointing to highlighted statutes and sentencing guidelines. The wire fraud charges alone carry penalties of up to 20 years in federal prison. Add the elder abuse enhancement, conspiracy charges, and identity manipulation, and you're looking at sentences that could effectively amount to life imprisonment for people in their 40s and 70s. The severity of it left me reeling. I had been thinking of this as a devastating family betrayal. William was describing something that could permanently destroy multiple lives. William, I said after a moment, I need to ask something difficult. Do you think there's any chance Marcus genuinely believes I'm becoming incompetent? That this is motivated by concern rather than greed? That's a fair question, he replied. And it's one we need to examine carefully. He pulled out printouts of the recovered messages and began reading them methodically, searching for language that might suggest genuine concern. Here, he said, stopping at one message. From your brother Thomas. Dated 4 months ago. We need to accelerate the timeline before Griselda decides to remarry or makes any major charitable commitments. Once she's declared incompetent, we can reverse any problematic financial decisions she might make. He looked up at me. What does that suggest to you? That they're not worried about my cognitive health, I said slowly. They're worried about losing control of my money. Exactly, William said. And the reference to remarriage is especially telling. I felt my cheeks warm as realization hit. William, there's something you should know about why Thomas mentioned remarriage. What is it? Over the past few months, I've made comments about feeling less lonely, about new interests and social activities. I never mentioned you specifically, but I think they suspected I was forming relationships outside their control, and that fear motivated them to accelerate their plans. William was silent for a long moment, absorbing that. It appears so, he said finally. He didn't speak again for several minutes. When he did, his voice carried the unmistakable weight of both professional resolve and deeply personal anger. Griselda, Judge Sterling said carefully, this means that part of their conspiracy was motivated by the possibility that you might find happiness and companionship, something that would interfere with their inheritance expectations. Is that relevant legally? Extremely. It demonstrates premeditation and financial motivation, rather than genuine concern for your welfare. It also shows that they view your personal relationships as threats to their economic interests. Before I could respond, Oliver's voice called out from the guest room. Grandma She? Judge Sterling? You need to see this. I found something really important. We rushed down the hall. Oliver was standing over his laptop, his face caught between excitement and alarm. What did you find, sweetheart? I asked. I was running deeper recovery scans on the deleted files, he said, fingers flying over the keyboard. And I uncovered a conversation thread that was permanently deleted 3 weeks ago. It's about the fake doctor they hired to evaluate you. William leaned over Oliver's shoulder as the recovered messages filled the screen. What does it say? Oliver scrolled, then began reading the most critical parts aloud. Dad wrote, the actor we hired to play Dr. Harrison has extensive experience portraying medical professionals in pharmaceutical commercials. He's been briefed on the specific diagnostic terminology needed to justify institutionalization. An actor. I gasped. Oliver continued. Mom replied. I've coached him on your typical behavioral patterns and speech habits, so his evaluation will seem authentic. He'll recommend immediate supervised care based on progressive dementia symptoms. William's jaw tightened as Oliver scrolled further. And Uncle Thomas wrote, I've prepared the legal paperwork to implement conservatorship immediately following the medical evaluation. We can have Griselda transported to the Willowbrook Care Facility within hours of the diagnosis. Willowbrook Care Facility, William repeated grimly. I know it. High-security memory care. Advanced dementia patients. Full supervision. The reality hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just trying to control my finances. They were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent and institutionalized, based on a fake medical evaluation performed by a paid actor. Oliver, I said, my voice shaking, please save all of this with the other evidence. I already did, Grandma She, he said. And there's more. I found financial records. They've already paid the actor $5,000, and they put down a $25,000 deposit at Willowbrook. They've already paid for my institutionalization, I whispered. William stood and began pacing the room, his legal instincts fully engaged. Griselda, this changes everything. They've moved from conspiracy into active execution. The fake medical evaluation is scheduled for tomorrow evening. That gives us less than 36 hours to stop a plan that could result in your immediate confinement. What do we do? I asked. We coordinate with federal authorities, William said firmly. We document the attempted fraud in real time, while protecting you from being declared incompetent based on fabricated evidence. Some family betrayals could be addressed through conversation, some through forgiveness. This one required federal law enforcement intervention, and we had less than 36 hours to save my freedom, my independence, and possibly my life. William spent most of Monday morning on the phone with federal prosecutors, FBI agents, and colleagues from his years on the federal bench, assembling what he called a coordinated response framework. I sat at my kitchen table, listening to fragments of conversations that sounded like scenes from a crime drama rather than my own life. Yes, Agent Martinez, we have comprehensive digital evidence of a conspiracy to commit elder fraud using fabricated medical documentation and deepfake technology. The attempted evaluation is scheduled for tomorrow evening at the subject's residence. We need real-time monitoring to document the fraud as it occurs. Meanwhile, Oliver worked beside me, building a meticulous digital presentation. 6 months of messages, payments, image manipulation, and legal planning, organized chronologically, annotated with technical explanations. Grandma Gigi, he said gently, turning his laptop toward me, I want you to understand exactly what they did to those photos. It's important you know this wasn't your fault. You weren't confused. What do you mean? I asked. Look at this, he said, pulling up a photo from my 74th birthday. I was smiling, holding a slice of cake, surrounded by family members who had already been planning my institutionalization. This is the original. Then he clicked to the altered version. My expression was vacant, my eyes unfocused, my smile distorted into something bewildered and fragile. They used AI to manipulate your facial expressions frame by frame, Oliver explained. To anyone without technical training, this looks like genuine photographic evidence of cognitive decline. My stomach turned. How many photos? I asked. 47, he said quietly. Across 8 months, they created a full timeline of supposed deterioration. William returned to the table, his expression grave. The federal response team is in place, he announced. Tomorrow evening, FBI agents will be monitoring the property from unmarked vehicles. Audio and video recording will document the fraud as it unfolds. Federal prosecutors will be standing by to authorize immediate arrests. What happens during the dinner? I asked. You proceed as if you know nothing, William said. The actor will arrive. He'll attempt the evaluation. We allow the fraud to progress far enough to establish undeniable criminal intent. Then agents intervene. And Oliver? I asked quickly. I don't want him to see his parents arrested. William nodded. Already handled. Oliver will spend the evening with my daughter Rebecca and her family. She's a pediatric psychologist, specializes in helping children process family trauma. You have a daughter? I asked, startled, realizing how much of William's life I still didn't know despite our 8 months together. Rebecca is 38, he said. Married. 2 kids. And she's been asking to meet you for months. She thought I'd been remarkably secretive about my social life lately. The comment reminded me that I hadn't been the only one keeping our relationship private. William, it turned out, had been just as cautious about introducing me to his family as I had been about introducing him to mine, though his restraint seemed motivated by respect for my wishes rather than fear of judgment. William, after tomorrow night, assuming everything goes according to plan, there won't be any reason to keep our relationship secret anymore. How do you feel about that? Terrified and relieved in equal measure. The rest of Monday was consumed by detailed preparation for what William called the controlled exposure of active fraud. FBI agents came to my house to install monitoring equipment. Federal prosecutors briefed me on my role in documenting the conspiracy, and Oliver created redundant backups of all the evidence in case his original files were compromised. Mrs. Blackwood, said Agent Martinez, the lead FBI investigator, tomorrow evening will require you to act naturally while your family attempts to have you declared incompetent. Do you feel capable of maintaining that performance while knowing what they're trying to do to you? Agent Martinez, I operated a major hotel for 30 years. I've handled difficult customers, dishonest employees, and business crises that required absolute composure while managing serious problems behind the scenes. I think I can manage one evening with my treacherous family. Good. Remember, We need clear evidence of intent to defraud you before we can intervene. The fake doctor must actually begin his fraudulent medical evaluation, and your family must demonstrate active participation in the conspiracy. That evening, Marcus called to confirm the details for my surprise birthday dinner. Mom, we're so excited about tomorrow night. Claudia's planned something really special, and we've invited a few people we think will make the celebration especially meaningful for you. That sounds wonderful, dear. Who will be attending? Just family and a few close friends. Oh, and Claudia met a fascinating doctor who specializes in geriatric medicine. She thought you might enjoy meeting him since you've been interested in staying healthy and active as you age. The casual way Marcus introduced the fake medical evaluation made my stomach turn. He lied with such practiced ease that I wondered how many other deceptions I had accepted over the years without question. That sounds very thoughtful of Claudia. I look forward to meeting him. Mom, I want you to know how much we love you and how important your well-being is to all of us. I love you too, Marcus. The call ended with my son expressing affection and concern that I now knew were entirely fabricated, carefully staged to establish benevolent intent before attempting to institutionalize me using fraudulent medical evidence. After I hung up, William found me sitting at the kitchen table, staring at my phone with what must have been a devastated expression. Griselda, what's wrong? I keep thinking about the last 6 months, about how Marcus and Claudia seem so concerned about my health, so interested in my routines, so supportive of my independence. Now I realize every expression of care was actually data collection for their conspiracy. I'm sorry the betrayal is so complete and calculated, William said gently. But tomorrow night we stop them. We hold them accountable. And after tomorrow, you'll be free to live your life without fear of manipulation or exploitation by people who should have been protecting you instead of preying on you. Some family dinners celebrate milestones and create happy memories. Tomorrow's dinner would expose a criminal conspiracy and result in multiple arrests, but it would also free me from 6 months of unknowing victimization by the people I trusted most. Tuesday evening arrived with unseasonably warm weather for late October. I spent over an hour choosing my outfit for what would either be my last family dinner or my liberation. I settled on a navy blue dress that Harold had always said made me look distinguished, appropriate attire, as William put it, for the most important performance of your life. Oliver left at 4 o'clock for his evening with William's daughter Rebecca, carrying his laptop bag and wearing the nervous excitement of a 12-year-old who knows something dramatic is about to happen but isn't sure how it will end. Grandma, he said as William picked him up. Everything I found on Mom's phone proves you're not confused or forgetful. You're one of the smartest people I know, and I'm proud that you're my grandmother. The sincerity in his voice nearly brought me to tears, especially because I knew that after tonight, Oliver's relationship with his parents would be fundamentally altered by witnessing their arrest for conspiring against the woman he loved. At 6:30, Marcus and Claudia arrived with elaborate flower arrangements and what appeared to be professionally catered appetizers, transforming my dining room as if preparing a true celebration, rather than an ambush designed to end my independence. Mom, you look absolutely beautiful, Claudia said with effusive warmth I now recognized as performance. 75 and still so elegant. We're lucky to have such a wonderful matriarch. Thank you, dear. This all looks lovely. Thomas arrived 20 minutes later with a bottle of expensive champagne and the confident expression of someone who believed he was about to execute a flawless legal maneuver. Griselda, happy birthday, sister. 75 years of wisdom and grace. You're an inspiration to us all. Thomas, how kind of you to say. They worked together with practiced coordination, transforming my dining room into an elegant party space. I found myself impressed by the attention to detail. Had I not known the truth, I would have been deeply moved by what appeared to be a loving family's effort to honor me. At precisely 7 o'clock the doorbell rang, its timing far too exact to be accidental. That must be Dr. Harrison, Claudia said brightly. I told you about him, Mom, the geriatric specialist I met at the wellness conference. He was so interested in meeting you after I described your active lifestyle and sharp mind. Marcus answered the door and returned with a distinguished man in his 60s, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a medical bag that looked convincingly authentic. The actor they had hired was clearly skilled. Mrs. Blackwood, what an honor to meet you, Dr. Harrison said. extending his hand with the professional warmth perfected through years of practice. Claudia has told me so much about your remarkable energy and independence. I specialize in helping people your age maintain cognitive sharpness and physical vitality as they navigate the challenges of aging. How thoughtful of Claudia to arrange this introduction. Through the dining room windows, I could see the unmarked FBI vehicles positioned strategically around my property. Federal agents were documenting every word that was about to unfold. We moved through dinner conversation that felt surreal in its normalcy. Marcus talked at length about his consulting work. Claudia described her latest fitness clients. Thomas shared anecdotes from his legal career, while Dr. Harrison asked seemingly innocent questions about my daily routines, social activities, and general health status. Mrs. Blackwood, Claudia said casually, we've noticed that you sometimes have difficulty remembering appointments or managing complex tasks. How would you describe your experience with those challenges? I'm not aware of having significant difficulties with appointments or complex tasks, I replied honestly. Of course, Dr. Harrison said gently. Many people in your situation aren't fully aware of the changes that others notice. That's perfectly normal. The conversation continued, with Dr. Harrison asking increasingly leading questions, each one designed to elicit responses that could be framed as evidence of cognitive decline, while my family supplied supportive commentary that subtly reinforced his suggestions about my supposed mental deterioration. Dr. Harrison, Thomas said during dessert, we've been concerned about Griselda's judgment regarding financial decisions. She's been talking about making some major charitable commitments that seem impulsive, and she's been mentioning new social relationships that worry us. At her age, Claudia added, we're concerned about her vulnerability to people who might take advantage of her generosity. These are very common concerns with aging adults, Dr. Harrison replied with practiced sympathy. Mrs. Blackwood, how do you feel about your family's observations regarding your recent decision-making? I feel that my family may be misinterpreting my desire for independence and new experiences as signs of impaired judgment. He tilted his head thoughtfully. That kind of defensive response often indicates diminished self-awareness about cognitive changes. Mrs. Blackwood, would you be willing to undergo a brief cognitive assessment so we can determine the best ways to support your continued well-being? This was the moment William had warned me about, the point where the fake medical evaluation would begin in earnest, producing the fraudulent evidence needed to justify my institutionalization. What kind of assessment, Dr. Harrison? Just some simple questions and tasks to evaluate memory, reasoning, and judgment. Nothing stressful or complicated. Dr. Harrison opened his medical bag and removed what appeared to be legitimate psychological testing materials, along with forms I assumed were meant to document my supposed cognitive impairment. Let's start with some basic orientation questions. Mrs. Blackwood, what year is it? 2024. And what month? October. Very good. Now, can you tell me what you had for breakfast this morning? Toast with jam and coffee. And can you remember what you did yesterday afternoon? I could see Marcus, Claudia, and Thomas watching with barely concealed anticipation, clearly expecting these questions to expose memory problems that would support their conspiracy. Yesterday afternoon, I spent time with my grandson, Oliver, helping him with a computer project. I see, Dr. Harrison said. Your family mentioned that you sometimes have difficulty with technology and modern devices. Can you describe your experience using computers or smartphones? I have limited experience with technology, I said calmly, but I'm learning with Oliver's help. He made notes on his forms, nodding with the kind of professional concern that suggested he was documenting pathology rather than normal human variation. Mrs. Blackwood, I'd like to try a more complex reasoning exercise. If you had $100 and spent $37 on groceries and $28 on gas, how much money would you have remaining? $35. And if you needed to tip a restaurant server 20% on a $60 meal, how much would you tip? $12. More notes. More concerned nodding. More exchanged glances between my family members, signals that, in their minds, the evaluation was unfolding exactly as planned. Mrs. Blackwood, Dr. Harrison said finally, based on this preliminary assessment, I'm seeing some indicators that concern me regarding your capacity for independent decision-making, particularly around financial and social judgments. What kind of indicators? Subtle signs of diminished awareness about your own limitations, combined with your family's observations about recent changes in your behavior and decision-making patterns. This was it. The moment when the fake doctor would recommend my institutionalization based on fabricated evidence and fraudulent medical opinion. Dr. Harrison, I asked, what are you recommending? I believe you would benefit from supervised care in a specialized facility, where trained professionals can help you navigate the challenges of aging, while ensuring your safety and well-being. Through the dining room windows, I could see FBI agents moving into position around my house. The fraud was about to be exposed. The arrests were imminent. My family was about to discover that their conspiracy had been documented by federal law enforcement from the very beginning. Some medical evaluations are meant to help patients maintain their independence. This one was designed to justify stealing mine, but it was about to become evidence in a federal criminal case instead. Dr. Harrison, I said, drawing on the composure 30 years of hotel management had taught me, could you be more specific about what kind of supervised care facility you're recommending? Well, Mrs. Blackwood, he replied, based on what I've observed this evening, I believe you would benefit from the comprehensive support services available at Willowbrook Care Facility. They specialize in patients who require assistance with daily decision-making and financial management. The mention of Willowbrook, the very facility Oliver had uncovered in the deleted messages, sent a chill through me. I forced myself to respond as though I were genuinely considering the recommendation. That sounds quite expensive. How would such care be financed? Oh, don't worry about the financial aspects, Thomas interjected smoothly. Marcus and I have been researching the best ways to manage your assets to ensure you receive proper care, without depleting your resources unnecessarily. We've already spoken with Willowbrook about their admission process, Claudia added helpfully. They have an opening available immediately, which is quite fortunate given their usual waiting lists. Marcus nodded. Mom, we know this is overwhelming, but Dr. Harrison's assessment confirms what we've all been noticing about your increasing confusion and poor judgment. We just want what's best for you. And what about my house? My personal belongings? We'll handle all of those details, Thomas assured me. I've prepared power of attorney documents that will allow us to manage your property and assets efficiently, while you focus on your health and recovery. Dr. Harrison reached into his bag again and withdrew a clipboard holding official-looking forms, already partially completed. Mrs. Blackwood, if you could just sign these medical evaluation forms, we can begin the process of getting you the care you need. This was the critical moment, the point at which they would attempt to secure my signature on documents authorizing my institutionalization based on a fraudulent medical assessment. Dr. Harrison, I said evenly, before I sign anything, could you explain your medical qualifications and licensing information? I'd like to understand your expertise in geriatric psychiatry. The question caught him off guard. I watched his confident demeanor falter as he realized he hadn't prepared for scrutiny of his credentials. Of course, Mrs. Blackwood, he said after a beat. I'm board certified in internal medicine, with additional specialization in cognitive assessment for elderly patients. Which medical school did you attend? Harvard Medical School. Class of 1982. And your residency training? Massachusetts General Hospital. Internal medicine residency from 1982 to 1986. The answers came smoothly, almost effortlessly, too smoothly. Well rehearsed. Whoever had coached this actor had clearly provided a detailed fictional background, designed to impress laypeople. Dr. Harrison, I said calmly, may I see your medical license and board certification documents? I prefer to verify credentials before making important healthcare decisions. For the first time, he looked genuinely uncomfortable. His eyes flicked briefly toward Marcus and Claudia, an expression crossing his face that suggested this wasn't part of their prepared script. Mrs. Blackwood, he replied carefully, I don't typically carry physical copies of licensing documents when making house calls. But I assure you, all of my credentials are properly filed with the state medical board. I understand, I said. What's your medical license number? I can verify it online right now. Mom, Marcus interrupted sharply. This level of suspicion about Dr. Harrison's qualifications is exactly the kind of paranoid thinking that concerns us about your mental state. Questioning medical credentials is paranoid thinking? When you're interrogating a respected physician who has generously agreed to evaluate you in your own home, Marcus replied. Yes. It suggests diminished trust and judgment. Claudia reached across the table and patted my hand with practiced sympathy. Mom Blackwood, we know this is scary, but you need to trust us to help you make good decisions. Dr. Harrison is trying to help you. What's your medical license number? Dr. Harrison? I repeated, ignoring Claudia's condescension. Through the dining room windows, I noticed subtle movement outside. Members of the FBI surveillance team shifting position. I suspected they were preparing for immediate intervention as soon as the fraud attempt was sufficiently documented. Mrs. Blackwood, Dr. Harrison said, his voice tightening, perhaps we should focus on getting you the care you need rather than getting bogged down in bureaucratic details about licensing verification. The care I need based on what diagnostic criteria? I asked evenly. The cognitive assessment we just completed demonstrated that I can perform basic arithmetic, remember recent events, and answer orientation questions correctly. That hardly constitutes evidence of dementia, requiring immediate institutionalization. Thomas leaned forward, wearing the expression he had always used when attempting to assert legal authority in family discussions. Griselda, you're being unreasonably difficult. We're all concerned about your welfare, and Dr. Harrison's professional opinion confirms our observations about your declining mental capacity. What specific examples of declining mental capacity have you observed, Thomas? Well, he hesitated. Your increased social activity with people we don't know. Your talk about making major financial decisions without consulting family. Your resistance to reasonable suggestions about safety and health precautions. So my independence is evidence of mental incapacity? Your poor judgment about appropriate behavior for a woman your age is evidence of diminished cognitive function, Claudia said, her impatience barely concealed. Normal 75-year-old women don't start acting like teenagers with secret social lives and mysterious new interests. That comment landed harder than she realized. It made me understand they suspected more about my relationship with William than I had previously thought, and that their urgency to institutionalize me was driven by fear that my romantic involvement might interfere with their inheritance plans. What secret social life are you referring to, Claudia? The mysterious appointments you won't discuss. The phone calls you take in private. The unexplained absences when we try to visit you. Marcus nodded. Mom, healthy people your age don't have secrets from their families about how they spend their time, or who they spend it with. Mrs. Blackwood, Dr. Harrison interjected. This kind of defensive questioning and resistance to family concern is exactly what I would expect from someone experiencing early-stage dementia with paranoid ideation. Paranoid ideation, I repeated. The belief that people are conspiring against you when they're actually trying to help you. The irony was so complete I nearly laughed aloud. The fake doctor was describing my accurate suspicion of their conspiracy as evidence of delusion requiring psychiatric intervention. Dr. Harrison, I said, what would you say if I told you I have evidence that this entire medical evaluation is fraudulent, that you are not actually a licensed physician, and that my family has been conspiring for 6 months to have me declared incompetent so they can control my assets? Silence followed, absolute and total. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly. Mom, Marcus said carefully, that kind of elaborate paranoid thinking is exactly what we've been worried about. Is it paranoid thinking, Marcus? I asked quietly, or an accurate assessment of what's actually happening in this room tonight? At that precise moment, the front doorbell rang. 3 sharp, authoritative chimes. The unmistakable sound of law enforcement arrival. Mrs. Blackwood, a voice called from the porch. This is Special Agent Martinez with the FBI. We have a warrant to enter and investigate suspected elder fraud in progress. The expressions on my family's faces shifted rapidly, from confusion to alarm to absolute terror, as the reality of federal intervention sank in. Dr. Harrison dropped his clipboard and clutched his medical bag as if preparing to flee. Marcus, Claudia, and Thomas stared at one another in stunned silence, the look of people realizing their criminal activity had been under federal surveillance. Some birthday parties in with cake and happy memories. My 75th birthday party was about to end with handcuffs and federal arrests. But it was also the beginning of my liberation from 6 months of manipulation by the people who should have been protecting me. rather than plotting to destroy my independence. The FBI agents entered the dining room with professional efficiency, transforming a family gathering into a federal crime scene within minutes. Special Agent Martinez, whom I had briefly met during the preparation phase, approached the table where my family sat frozen in various stages of shock. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "we are federal agents investigating conspiracy to commit elder fraud, wire fraud, and identity manipulation. Please remain seated while we verify identifications and explain the situation." Dr. Harrison, whatever his real name was, made a final attempt to maintain his professional facade. "Officers, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I'm Dr. Robert Harrison, and I was conducting a routine geriatric assessment at this family's request." "Sir," Agent Martinez replied calmly, "we have comprehensive evidence that you are James McCarthy, an actor residing in Stamford, Connecticut, who was paid $5,000 to impersonate a medical professional for the purpose of providing a fraudulent psychiatric evaluation." The blood drained from the fake doctor's face as the full scope of the conspiracy became unmistakably clear. Furthermore, Agent Martinez continued, his tone calm but unyielding, "We have recordings of this entire evening's conversation, including your attempts to convince Mrs. Blackwood to sign institutionalization forms based on fabricated medical assessments." Marcus found his voice first, though it emerged as more of a croak than his usual confident baritone. "This is insane. We were trying to help my mother get appropriate medical care for her declining mental condition." Agent Martinez didn't flinch. "Mr. Blackwood, we have 6 months of digital communications between you, your wife, and your uncle documenting your conspiracy to have your mother declared legally incompetent using manufactured evidence. That includes deepfake photographs and fraudulent medical evaluations." Claudia's composure shattered completely as the reality of federal prosecution sank in. Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head. "We never meant to hurt anyone. We were concerned about Griselda's judgment, about her vulnerability to people who might take advantage of her." "Mrs. Blackwood," Agent Martinez said, turning to Claudia with professional precision, "we have evidence that you used advanced technology to create false photographic evidence of cognitive impairment, paid for fraudulent medical evaluations, and made deposits at a secured care facility to arrange your mother-in-law's institutionalization against her will." Thomas, with his legal background, understood the severity of the charges far more clearly than Marcus or Claudia. His face had gone completely white as he processed the federal implications of what they had attempted. "Agent Martinez," Thomas said carefully, forcing the words past dry lips, "I believe we need to discuss this situation with legal representation present." Agent Martinez nodded once. "Mr. Thomas Blackwood, you have the right to remain silent and to have an attorney present during questioning. However, we are executing arrest warrants based on evidence of federal crimes, including conspiracy to defraud an elderly person, wire fraud, and elder abuse." The formal reading of Miranda rights began as FBI agents stepped forward and placed handcuffs on Marcus, Claudia, Thomas, and the man posing as Dr. Harrison. I remained seated at my own dining table, watching my family's conspiracy collapse into federal criminal prosecution. "Mrs. Blackwood," Agent Martinez said, turning to me with professional courtesy, "are you prepared to provide formal testimony regarding tonight's events and the conspiracy you discovered through your grandson's investigation?" "Yes," I said steadily, "I am. And Judge Sterling has agreed to serve as your legal representative during the formal statement process?" "He has." As if summoned by his name, William appeared in my dining room, having apparently been waiting outside until the arrests were complete. He looked every inch the distinguished federal judge, but his expression held personal concern rather than professional detachment. "Griselda," he said softly, "are you all right?" "I'm fine, William," I replied. "Shaken but fine. The evidence package Oliver prepared has been invaluable in establishing the scope and timeline of the conspiracy," Agent Martinez said. "That young man's technical skills and ethical integrity likely saved his grandmother from serious harm." As my family members were led out of my house in handcuffs, Marcus turned back to look at me. His expression was a tangled mix of confusion, anger, and what might have been genuine remorse. "Mom," he said hoarsely, "who is this man? How did you know about our plans? How did federal agents get involved in a private family matter?" Marcus, I said calmly. This is Judge William Sterling. He's the man I've been romantically involved with for 8 months. I didn't introduce him to you because I was afraid you'd disapprove of your elderly mother having a personal relationship. You've been dating someone for 8 months without telling us? Marcus said, stunned. I've been dating someone for 8 months without telling you because your wife made comments about older women who make fools of themselves chasing men. I replied evenly. And because you warned me to be careful of people interested in my financial situation. Marcus swallowed hard. But how did you know about our conversations? How did you get evidence of our planning? Your 12-year-old son hacked into Claudia's phone as a technology exercise, I said. He discovered your conspiracy by accident. Oliver saved every message, every deleted file, and every piece of evidence documenting your plans to have me declared incompetent and institutionalized. The devastation that crossed Marcus's face as he realized his own son had exposed the conspiracy was almost heartbreaking. Despite everything he had done. Oliver knows about all of this, he whispered. Yes, I said. Oliver knows his parents were planning to hurt his grandmother through fraud and deception. And he chose to protect me rather than protect you. Mrs. Blackwood, Agent Martinez interrupted gently. We need to complete the arrest process and transport the subjects for federal booking. You'll need to come to our offices tomorrow morning to provide formal testimony for the prosecution. After my family and the fake doctor were removed from my house, William and I sat alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of what had been intended as my birthday celebration, but had become the scene of a federal investigation. Griselda, William asked quietly, how are you processing what just happened? I feel relieved that the conspiracy has been stopped, I said after a moment. Devastated that my own family could plan something so cruel, and grateful that Oliver had the courage and skill to expose it. And how do you feel about our relationship no longer being secret? Terrified, I admitted, and liberated at the same time. For 8 months I worried about what Marcus and Claudia would think about me being romantically involved at my age. Now I see their concerns were never about my well-being, only their inheritance. William reached across the table and took my hands, his grip gentle but steady. Griselda, helping you tonight wasn't just about stopping elder fraud or exposing a criminal conspiracy. It was about protecting someone I care about deeply. From people willing to destroy her independence and dignity for financial gain. What happens now? I asked softly. With the legal case with my family with us? The legal case will proceed through federal court, William said. Your family will likely face significant prison sentences for the crimes they attempted to commit. Your relationships may need to be rebuilt from nothing, if that's even possible after this level of betrayal. As for us, our relationship can finally be open and honest instead of hidden. And Oliver will need significant support to process the trauma of discovering his parents' crimes and witnessing their arrest. But he'll also need recognition for the courage he showed in protecting you. Later that night, after William left and I was alone in my house for the first time in months, without fear of manipulation, I called Oliver at Rebecca Sterling's house. Grandma, he asked softly. Are Mom and Dad going to prison? They're going to face serious legal consequences for what they tried to do, I said gently. Good, he replied without hesitation. What they were planning was really mean. You didn't deserve that. Oliver, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I want you to know how proud I am of you. You chose integrity, even when it meant exposing your parents' wrongdoing. Grandma, he said, you're the best person I know. I couldn't let them hurt you. Some families are connected by blood and obligation. The family I was building with Oliver and William was connected by choice, integrity, and mutual protection, not manipulation or greed. And that family was already stronger than anything my biological relatives had tried to construct. 3 months after the arrests, I sat in federal court watching Marcus, Claudia, Thomas, and James McCarthy, the fake doctor. Dr. Harrison received their sentences for conspiracy to commit elder fraud. Oliver sat beside me, now living permanently in my house under a custody arrangement that recognized him as a victim of his parents' criminal behavior, rather than an accessory to their conspiracy. The defendant's use of sophisticated technology to manufacture evidence of cognitive decline represented a particularly egregious form of elder abuse. Judge Patricia Henley announced from the bench. This conspiracy, she continued, could have resulted in the victim's indefinite institutionalization, based entirely on fabricated medical and photographic evidence. Marcus received 4 years in federal prison. Claudia received 3.5 years. Thomas received 5 years due to his role as the legal architect of the conspiracy. James McCarthy received 2 years for his participation as the fraudulent medical professional. Furthermore, Judge Henley continued, the court is ordering full financial restitution to Mrs. Blackwood for legal fees, investigative costs, and emotional damages, plus forfeiture of any inheritance rights or claims against her estate. Oliver had been following the proceedings with the intense focus he brought to everything that captured his interest, and I could see him processing the reality that his parents would be in federal prison until he was nearly 17 years old. Grandma, he whispered. Do you think they understand now why what they did was wrong? I think they understand that it was illegal and that it had serious consequences, I replied quietly. Whether they understand why it was morally wrong is something they'll have to figure out during their time in prison. The past 3 months had been a period of reconstruction and healing that would have been impossible without William's support and guidance. He had helped me navigate the complex emotions of family betrayal while I learned, slowly and carefully, to trust him with aspects of my life that I had been hiding for our entire relationship. Griselda, William had said during one of our many conversations about rebuilding after trauma, I understand that discovering your family's conspiracy has made it difficult to trust anyone's motivations. But I need you to know that my feelings for you have nothing to do with your financial situation, and everything to do with your intelligence, your humor, and your strength of character. How can I be sure of that? I had asked. When I was so wrong about Marcus and Claudia's motivations? Because you can observe my behavior over time and evaluate whether my actions demonstrate genuine care or opportunistic manipulation, he had said calmly. And because you have Oliver's technological skills available to investigate anyone whose intentions you want to verify. The suggestion had been made with humor, but Oliver had taken it seriously. He spent several weeks conducting what he called background verification research on William's financial situation, family relationships, and professional reputation. Grandma, Oliver announced after completing his investigation, Judge Sterling is actually wealthier than you are. His retirement investments in federal pension mean he doesn't need your money, and his family relationships all seem healthy and honest. I think his motivations for dating you are genuine. Oliver, I said, startled. You researched William's personal finances? I wanted to make sure he wasn't trying to take advantage of you like Mom, Dad, and Uncle Thomas were, he explained earnestly. But all the evidence suggests that he really cares about you for who you are rather than what you have. William's daughter, Rebecca, had become an unexpected ally during this period. She provided professional counseling support for Oliver, while also helping me understand how to rebuild family relationships based on honesty rather than performance. Mrs. Blackwood, Rebecca explained during one of our sessions, Oliver's discovery of his parents' conspiracy has actually freed him from family dynamics that were already unhealthy. Children in manipulative households often develop anxiety about their own judgment and their ability to trust adult authority figures. Now he has concrete evidence that his instincts were correct, that standing up for what's right sometimes requires opposing people you love. That's an incredibly valuable life lesson, even though it came through traumatic circumstances. The criminal sentencing concluded with victim impact statements that allowed me to address my family directly for the first time since their arrest. Marcus, Claudia, Thomas, I said, standing at the victim's podium with the composed authority that 30 years of hotel management had taught me to maintain during difficult situations. I want you to understand the impact of what you attempted to do to me. You weren't just planning to steal my money or control my property. You were planning to erase my identity as an independent adult and confine me to an institution for people with severe dementia, based entirely on evidence you fabricated. Marcus was crying as I spoke, but I couldn't tell whether his tears reflected genuine remorse or self-pity over the consequences of his criminal behavior. You made me doubt my own judgment. You made me question my mental competence because I trusted you to tell me the truth. You turned my love for my family into a weapon that could have destroyed my freedom and my dignity. I paused, then continued. I think it would be great, Oliver said without hesitation. Judge Sterling is smart and honest, and he helped save you from Mom, Dad, and Uncle Thomas. Plus, Rebecca is really nice, and it would be cool to have a stepsister who's a psychologist. That evening, William arrived for dinner carrying flowers and wearing the expression of someone who had something important to discuss. "Griselda," he said, "I have a question to ask you, and I want Oliver to be part of this conversation, because any decision I make about our future affects him too." "What kind of question?" I asked. William reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small velvet box that made my heart skip several beats. "I wanted to ask whether you would be willing to marry me, knowing that marriage would mean combining our families, our resources, and our plans for whatever years we have remaining together. And I wanted to ask Oliver whether he would be comfortable having me as his step-grandfather, knowing that I would take seriously the responsibility of helping raise him and supporting his education and career development." Oliver looked at the ring box, then at William, then at me, carefully processing the implications of what was being proposed. "Judge Sterling," he asked finally, "would marrying Grandma mean that I would have a family based on people choosing to be together, instead of people being stuck with each other?" "That's exactly what it would mean, Oliver." He nodded, satisfied. "Then I think you should definitely get married. And I think you should do it soon, before any other criminals try to mess up our family. Some marriage proposals happen in romantic restaurants or exotic vacation destinations. Mine happened in my kitchen, with my 12-year-old grandson serving as both witness and advisor, and it was perfect." 6 months later, I stood in the garden behind William's house, our house now, watching Oliver demonstrate his latest technological creation to a gathering of federal law enforcement officials, academic researchers, and elderly advocacy groups. He had developed what he called the Family Truth Verification System, a smartphone app designed to help older adults detect deepfake photos and verify the credentials of medical professionals. The app uses artificial intelligence to analyze facial inconsistencies that indicate photo manipulation, Oliver explained to his rapt audience with the confidence of someone who had discovered his life's calling at age 13. It can also cross-reference medical license databases to verify doctor credentials in real time. William squeezed my hand as we watched our grandson, because that's how I now thought of Oliver, as our shared family rather than merely my biological relative. Field questions from FBI cybercrime specialists about the technical specifications of his anti-fraud software. "He's remarkable," whispered Dr. Sarah Chun, director of the National Center on Elder Abuse, who had traveled from Washington specifically to evaluate Oliver's work. "Most cybersecurity professionals with decades of experience couldn't have created something this sophisticated." "Oliver had strong motivation to solve the problem," I replied. "Nothing focuses the mind quite like discovering that your own parents were using technology to commit crimes against someone you love." The past 6 months had transformed our unconventional family unit into something that felt both stable and purposeful. William and I had married in a quiet ceremony attended by Oliver, Rebecca's family, and a handful of friends who understood that love at our age was precious precisely because it was unexpected. Oliver had settled into his new life with the resilience children often demonstrate when removed from dysfunctional situations and placed in environments that prioritize their well-being. "Mrs. Sterling," said Agent Martinez, approaching with a level of professional respect that suggested he now viewed me as a colleague rather than a victim, "Oliver's app has already helped us identify 3 other cases of family fraud involving fabricated medical evidence. The FBI would like to discuss funding his further research through our cybercrime prevention initiative." "That's wonderful news," I said. "Oliver will be thrilled. And we'd also like to discuss your foundation's educational programs. The workshops you've developed about recognizing family financial exploitation are exactly what we need to help vulnerable adults protect themselves." The Blackwood Sterling Foundation for Elder Protection had become my full-time occupation since the criminal trials concluded, transforming my traumatic experience into practical resources for protecting others from similar betrayals. Working with Oliver on the technological aspects, and with William on the legal framework had created a family endeavor that aligned our different expertise toward a shared mission. "Grandma Oliver called from across the garden, where he was still surrounded by interested professionals. "Can you come explain the psychological aspects of family fraud detection? The FBI agents want to understand how victims can learn to trust their instincts about manipulation." I excused myself from Agent Martinez and walked toward the group gathered around Oliver, marveling at how completely our lives had been reconstructed since the evening a 12-year-old's hacking experiment had exposed 6 months of criminal conspiracy. The most important thing to understand about family financial exploitation, I told the assembled experts, is that victims often do have accurate instincts about manipulation. But they suppress those instincts because they don't want to believe that family members could be capable of such betrayal. What changed your ability to recognize the warning signs? Dr. Chun asked. Having concrete evidence that validated my suspicions, I replied. For months, I felt uncomfortable about my family's increased interest in my finances and their suggestions about what was appropriate behavior for someone my age. I dismissed those feelings as paranoia or oversensitivity. Oliver's digital evidence gave you permission to trust your own judgment, Dr. Martinez said. Exactly, I agreed. It proved that my discomfort was based on accurate perception of real threats, not irrational fear. Do you ever regret that the conspiracy was exposed? He asked gently. Would you have preferred to maintain relationships with Marcus, Claudia, and Thomas, even if those relationships were built on deception? It was a question I'd been wrestling with during quiet moments, especially when I received occasional letters from Marcus in federal prison expressing what appeared to be genuine remorse. I regret that my family was capable of such calculated cruelty, I said at last. But I don't regret that their conspiracy was exposed before it could succeed. And personally, William asked, do you regret that our relationship had to be revealed under such dramatic circumstances? William, I regret that I was afraid to introduce you to my family when you were the best thing that had happened to me in years. But I'm grateful that the crisis forced me to trust you with problems I couldn't solve alone. You know I would have helped you regardless of whether our relationship was public or private, he said. I know that now, I replied. But at the time, I was so afraid of being judged for having romantic feelings at my age that I couldn't see how isolation was making me more vulnerable to exploitation, rather than protecting me from embarrassment. Oliver joined us in the kitchen carrying his laptop, wearing the unmistakable expression of someone bursting with good news. Grandma, Judge William, I just got an email from the FBI Cybercrime Division, he said, barely containing his excitement. They want to offer me a summer internship next year. And they want to talk about scholarship programs for cybersecurity students who are interested in protecting vulnerable populations. Oliver, that's extraordinary, I said. How do you feel about working with the FBI? I think it would be amazing, he replied. I could learn advanced techniques for detecting digital fraud, and I could help develop better tools for protecting people like you from criminals like my parents. The casual way Oliver referred to Marcus and Claudia as criminals rather than parents reflected how thoroughly he had processed their betrayal and moved forward with his life. He held no illusions about their motivations or behavior, yet he showed none of the emotional damage one might expect from a child whose family had been torn apart by criminal prosecution. William pulled out a kitchen chair and sat beside him. Oliver, I want you to know how proud I am of the integrity you showed in protecting your grandmother, and how impressed I am by the work you're doing to help other families avoid similar betrayals. Thanks, Judge William, Oliver said. I'm proud that we're a family that protects each other instead of a family that hurts each other for money. That evening, after Oliver went to his room to work on homework and his technology projects, William and I sat together in the living room, reflecting on the unlikely journey that had brought us from a secret romance to a public marriage, and finally to a shared mission as advocates working to prevent elder abuse. Griselda, William said quietly, what do you think Harold would say about our life together? The question surprised me, not only because William rarely mentioned my late husband, but because I realized I had been asking myself the same thing. I think Harold would be proud that I found love again, I said slowly. He'd be grateful that Oliver has stable family support, and satisfied that I'm using my experience to help other people avoid similar trauma. William nodded. And what do you think he'd say about me? I think he'd appreciate that you see me as a complete person, not just a wealthy widow, I answered. And that you've been willing to share both my problems and my resources to create something meaningful together. Some second marriages are consolation prizes for people whose first marriages failed. Ours was different. Our second marriage had become a partnership stronger and more purposeful than either of us had ever known, built on honesty, mutual respect, and a shared commitment to protecting vulnerable people from the kind of betrayal that had first brought us together. And every day, as we worked with Oliver on projects that transformed criminal exploitation into educational protection, we proved that love at any age could create family bonds more powerful than genetics, greed, or social expectations. 1 year after our wedding, I stood at the podium of the National Conference on Elder Protection, looking out at an audience of 300 federal agents, social workers, legal professionals, and family advocates gathered to learn how to prevent the kind of sophisticated fraud that had nearly destroyed my independence. Oliver sat in the front row beside William, now 14 years old and already recognized as one of the youngest digital fraud experts in the country. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, "my grandson accidentally discovered that my own family had been planning to have me declared incompetent and institutionalized based on fabricated evidence. I learned that the greatest threats to elderly adults often come from the people we trust most. Over the past year, my traumatic experience had been transformed into a national advocacy platform, changing how law enforcement, healthcare professionals, and social service agencies approach family financial exploitation. The Blackwood Sterling Foundation had become a leading resource for education and prevention nationwide. While Oliver's technological innovations were being implemented by elder protection agencies across the country, I continued. The conspiracy against me wasn't motivated by concern for my welfare or confusion about my mental capacity," I said. "It was motivated by impatience with my financial independence and resentment over personal relationships that interfered with inheritance expectations." In the audience, I spotted Agent Martinez and Dr. Chan, now close colleagues in our shared work to protect vulnerable adults from family manipulation. Their research and resources had expanded our foundation's reach far beyond what William and I could have accomplished alone. "My family used cutting-edge technology to manufacture evidence of cognitive decline," I went on. "They hired professional actors to provide fraudulent medical evaluations and coordinated their deception with legal and financial institutions that would have enabled my institutionalization within hours of a false diagnosis." The technical sophistication of the conspiracy continued to shock professionals who understood how easily such tactics could be replicated by other families seeking to exploit elderly relatives. Oliver's counter-technology had become essential in detecting and stopping similar frauds before they succeeded. The applause that followed was sustained and deeply emotional, recognizing Oliver's extraordinary courage in exposing his own parents' conspiracy. He had become something of a celebrity in cybersecurity and elder advocacy circles, yet he wore the recognition with humility and quiet competence, fully aware of the seriousness of the problems he was helping to solve. "Oliver Blackwood Sterling," I said, using the hyphenated surname he had chosen after our family's reconfiguration, "would you please join me to demonstrate the latest version of the family truth verification system?" Oliver approached the podium with his laptop, moving with the confident ease of someone who had already presented to FBI directors, congressional committees, and international cybersecurity conferences over the past year. "Thank you, Grandma Shi," he said. "Ladies and gentlemen, the FTVS app now includes facial recognition technology capable of detecting deepfake manipulation in real time, database integration that instantly verifies medical and legal credentials, and behavioral analysis algorithms that identify suspicious communication patterns within families. Can you show us how the deepfake detection works?" someone in the audience asked. "Sure," Oliver replied. "Here's one of the fake photos my parents created to make Grandma Gigi appear confused and disoriented." He projected the manipulated image onto the conference screens, the altered version of my face engineered to suggest cognitive impairment. The app analyzes facial geometry, skin texture, and lighting patterns to identify artificial modifications, Oliver explained. "Watch what happens when I run the detection algorithm." Within seconds, the app highlighted visual inconsistencies that revealed digital manipulation, producing evidence admissible in court and understandable to lay people who might otherwise become victims of similar deception. "And here's the credential verification feature," Oliver continued. "If someone claiming to be Dr. Harrison attempted to evaluate your mental capacity, you could immediately verify their medical license status." Oliver demonstrated how the app would have exposed James McCarthy as an unlicensed actor rather than a board-certified physician, preventing the fraudulent medical evaluation that had been central to my family's conspiracy. The app also monitored communication patterns across smartphones and computers to identify coordinated deception by multiple family members. If relatives were planning institutionalization through group chats and deleted messages, the FTVS would detect and document that activity. The presentation continued with testimonials from elderly adults who had used Oliver's technology to protect themselves from family exploitation, law enforcement officials who had relied on its evidence-gathering features to prosecute fraud cases, and healthcare professionals who had learned to verify their own credentials to protect patients from imposters. Dr. Sterling then called Dr. Chun from the audience. "How has this advocacy work affected your family relationships?" she asked. "And your marriage to someone 30 years younger than your previous life experience?" William stood to answer, and I was struck once again by how distinguished and confident he appeared as he spoke about our unconventional family structure. "Marrying Griselda," Dr. Chun said, "has given me the opportunity to combine my legal expertise with her business acumen and Oliver's technological skills to create something more meaningful than any of us could have achieved independently. The age difference and the circumstances that brought us together are irrelevant when you're building a partnership based on shared values and complementary abilities. Griselda's need for legal help and my ability to provide it demonstrated that our relationship was based on mutual support, not opportunistic exploitation." Dr. Sterling nodded, then turned to Oliver. "What about you? How has your family situation affected your educational and career development?" Oliver approached the microphone with the same poise that had impressed federal officials and international cybersecurity experts throughout our year of advocacy work. "My biological parents taught me that family relationships can be used to hurt people when you care more about money than about protecting the people you're supposed to love," he said. "Grandma She and Judge William taught me that family relationships can be used to help people when you care more about doing what's right than what's convenient or profitable. Professionally, I want to work for the FBI's cybercrime division to protect vulnerable people from the kind of technological manipulation used against my grandmother. I also want to continue developing software that helps elderly adults maintain their independence and security." The conference concluded with announcements of new federal funding for elder protection programs, expanded training requirements for healthcare professionals who evaluate cognitive capacity, and legislative proposals strengthening criminal penalties for family financial exploitation involving technological deception. As we left the conference venue, I reflected on how completely our lives had been transformed by Oliver's accidental discovery of Marcus and Claudia's conspiracy 18 months earlier. "William," I said as we walked toward our car, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if Oliver hadn't hacked into Claudia's phone that weekend?" "I think you would have been institutionalized based on fabricated evidence," he replied. "Your assets would have been liquidated by people who saw your independence as an obstacle to their inheritance, and we never would have had the opportunity to build the life we have now. Oliver's technological curiosity and ethical integrity saved your freedom." William squeezed my hand. "Our marriage," he added, "was saved by your willingness to trust me with problems you couldn't solve alone, despite your fear of family judgment." My 12-year-old grandson had hacked his mother's phone for fun and discovered a family group chat called Operation Get Rid of Griselda, containing 2,471 messages planning to declare me incompetent using deepfake photos and a fake doctor. My son, daughter-in-law, and brother had conspired for 6 months to steal my $180 million fortune by having me institutionalized in a memory care facility. When I called the man I had been secretly dating for 8 months, a retired federal judge I had met at my hotel, he helped me turn their fake birthday celebration into a federal sting operation. Sometimes the relationship you hide out of fear of family judgment becomes the very relationship that saves you from family betrayal. At 76 years old, I had learned that family is not defined by genetics or legal ties, but by the willingness to protect one another from harm, rather than exploit vulnerability for gain. Oliver chose to protect his grandmother over his parents' criminal conspiracy. William chose to risk public exposure of our private relationship to help me fight federal fraud charges. And I finally learned to trust my instincts about people's motivations instead of suppressing my judgment to preserve relationships built on deception, rather than genuine affection.